All right, everyone. Welcome to the fall 2022 ethical debates with our MSP 200 class. Today we have on my left side here, which is also the Pro 4 side, the topic focusing on electronic media regulation. We have Paulina and Dalton. And then on my right side here, we have Maya, and Alex, focusing on the con against side. Their arguments and the main focus of their arguments will be unhinged social media. It equals negative or positive outcomes. And the second argument they're going to address is tackling fake news. So we're going to start with our pro side over here. You're going to have 6 minutes, and then we'll go over to our con side to ask any clarifying questions. All right, pro side, you're on the clock starting now.
All right. Without the internet, what life will be like? Imagine a world without summaries of our favorite TV shows, without the ability to interact with others on social media, and without the ability to express ourselves online. We can claim that someone who has used the internet may never be able to envision life without it, because it seems unthinkable. Now imagine in comparison that access to pornographic websites would be equal to that of social networking platforms, or that online crimes would be as simple as plucking flowers. Those scenarios appear increasingly realistic, and too much internet use is never good, but no internet use is awful. How can we make the most of the internet well without abusing its resources? In the 20th century, governmental control over the media was a pressing problem. Several nations have put restrictions on media material for several reasons. The main arguments for regulating the media centered on morality, bad language, and the impact of media on political processes. The internet was initially utilized as a governmental resource to communicate in the military and in the science field. So for government to have access and being able to control it makes so much sense, if we're talking about the origin of media regulations. These days, there are even more reasons why media should be regulated. Organizations and threats such as those associated with terrorism, fraud, child trafficking, etc. are found online exceedingly. The government imposes certain laws and regulations in this field in order to control how the media acquires, disseminates, and transmits information. So far, the research has been contradictory and inconclusive. According to Mesfin Bekalu, PhD, a research scientist in the Lee Armstrong Center for Health and Happiness at Harvard Chan School of Public Health, he noted that this was his inspiration to conduct a study the effects of social media. The study, published in the journal Health Education and Behavior, found a more nuanced response how individuals use social media had a significant impact on their mental health and social well-being. An unbalanced media definitely doesn't lead to any positive outcomes there are. It makes people degrade in so many ways. The internet may have made it easier to communicate, conduct business, or further the other's education, but it has also created new issues. The internet may provide information about hacking, making bombs, making drugs, committing suicide, and much more, causing people to use this information illegally for crimes to begin. It has become simple to obtain information about certain things on the internet, whether good or bad. For instance, Andreas Lubitz, a co-pilot who killed himself along with 149 other people in an airplane disaster in the French Alps, had searched terms like living will, suffering, and death saved on his iPad before the launch and before the incident actually happened. And the same thing with tackling the fake news. The main issue here is the misleading news and information we encounter on a daily basis, which causes rumors to circulate and many other issues that can occasionally have an impact on our beliefs and opinions. And what makes disinformation or so-called propaganda harmful? It's the type of promotional material that uses content that appeals to people's emotions and causes while strongly influencing their behavior and opinions in order to further the source's primary objective. It promotes and supports its idea through the use of the media. And the public's perception of fake news today is impartial, and it has been decided that it will stay in place and work to distinguish the good from the bad. And while the term fake news has been around for a while, it gained attention when many people witnessed Donald Trump's dramatic victory in the 2016 US presidential election and saw the effect of fake news and websites. The spread of false news and media manipulation in the 21st century greatly expanded the range of what constitutes the darkest and most effective types of propaganda. In addition to influencing how users see a situation and behave in response to it, propaganda can shape how we perceive other users in that circumstance. We are under pressure to establish whether the source is a part of our social network if we receive false information from them. For instance, if a piece of propaganda oversimplifies a subject, someone may try to draw attention to it and may purposefully work toward the internet outcomes of propaganda. Due to its one-sidedness and tendency for sentimental reasoning, manipulation can result in more manipulation or denial by presenting opposing viewpoints or representations, exposing reality of providing proof that the propaganda is lying, or both. So propaganda or fake news is a disease that will eventually try to transform you in some way, no matter how much you try to resist it and how much you think you are. Consider the fact that every commercial aims to influence you. Can you overcome it through, is this real question here? It appears that in your head suddenly may travel from person to person very quickly, much like a virus, and it is loaded with fresh methods designed to entice you and get the most effect. So I kept asking myself, is this even possible to try to hold something that might be unstoppable? So do you control things, or has propaganda taken over a control of us and led us to believe that we are the ones in charge of making the decisions? It is now quite obvious that propaganda is a powerful force that cannot be avoided.
All right. Now we have 3 minutes on the against con side to ask any clarifying questions to the arguments presented, and you're on the clock starting now.
Aren't websites with like porn age restricted, where you have to input your age? It's not just something you can freely find on the internet?
Yes, but it doesn't really ask you for your any sort of identification or ID card or any sort of proof that you're not like 18 years old, for example. There's no kind of like proof confirming like that you're not of age. So this is quite disturbing because anyone could open the Safari and just type the websites in.
But isn't it also on the user to use the internet or use websites and look at them? And even if it's a minor, it's on the parents to restrict that so they can't go on websites like this?
Yes, ideally it would be perfect if parents could take control of it. But since it's so easy to access, and children by being influenced in schools and like what they see online, and if like even one ad will pop up, they would think about it and like all day in their head, and like it would be easy to access it. Ideally, it would be perfect if parents would take control of it. But again, it's most of the cases it doesn't happen this way. Even me coming from a really good household, I wasn't really always controlled and protected from it.
But there also is ways that parents can restrict either not getting their child.
Is there a question and only questions for this one? Remember?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
But how can the government regulate if the parents are able to take control by not giving their child a device or restricting access to things online?
Yeah, for introducing new legislation, it would be best that the incentive for parents to protect their kids will be the additional legal consequences, not just the expectation that they shouldn't allow their kids to see something they shouldn't online. It's in the site's expectations that they do not allow any young age groups below 18 onto their sites. That's on like the Section 230 protections provided to those site owners means that they do not have as much responsibility. So if you place the responsibility on the parent, if there's also legislation that allows them to understand there's more need for them to protect their kid from it, it falls on both the site and the parents to protect their kid from it, because the kid can't protect themselves because they don't have the literacy for it.
Okay. All right, so now we move on to our con against side to present their arguments and their open. And you're on the clock starting now.
Social media platforms such as Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram contain four groups of individuals who build groups of people, individuals who build advertisements, users who create posts, managers who host speech, and users who consume the content created by others. Each element contains a form of speech. Samples 2019. These essential components keep the internet functioning as it has been since the creation of social media. Although regulations can provide some safety online, regulating the entire internet would be a mistake. It is important to stop people from posting harmful ideas and concepts, so using the terms and conditions to define what is not allowed on different platforms would still be encouraged. This is still our freedom of speech, just online instead of in person. As Cruz Jr. stated, as repeatedly noted by defenders of free speech, expressing popular opinions never needs protection. Rather, it is the commitment to protecting dissident expression that is the mark of an open society. Our opinion is a right. People should be able to express their opinions freely. On the other side, fake news will always be taken as a serious issue and will be flagged or taken down as soon as possible, just as it has been on most platforms today. The government overreach on social media platforms could violate free thinking and speech. It should be up to the platform to make the rules and the users to agree to them. Without government regulations, social media platforms will still have the ability to enforce their own rules and guidelines so they can be an independent and unique website and support their users without oversight. With regulation, all social media platforms will be the same other than the difference in posts and how they're posted, and people will not have as much creative freedom as Cruz stated. Much of the internet's spectacular growth can be attributed to the immunity from liability for user-generated content afforded to social media platforms and other internet-enabled services such as discussion boards, review and auction sites, and commentary sections by Section 230 of the 1996 Communications Decency Act. People will not use social media as they do now if their opinions can be taken down. If the government gets involved, it will feel like it is infringing on its own First Amendment freedom by participating in the civilians' right to their freedom of expression.
As we mentioned before, while regulating can provide safety online, it can also stop people from posting harmful ideas and concepts online, as if many things such as fake news and unhinged social media should not be in the government's control. These problems are possible fixes, so the government does not have to step in and infringe on our First Amendment rights. We want people to feel that they can express themselves freely without worry about what will happen to them.
It is on the people to know what is and is not allowed on these websites. The terms and conditions are meant to be read. If you don't read them, then how are you going to understand what the rules are?
All right. Now we go to our pro-con side. You have 3 minutes to ask any clarifying questions to their arguments. And you're on the clock starting now.
I'd like to start with, do you agree with the discretion of hate speech not being included in free speech online?
Free speech online, the terms and conditions in most to all social media platforms like Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook do not allow hate speech. Sometimes it's not caught, and that's on the people who are searching for the harmful ideas, but it is still their opinion, and if it's stated and it goes against the rules and guidelines, then it should be taken down.
And online forums or platforms are publicly accessible private forums. So
Question. Question? All right. Is question following?
Yes.
Okay.
We agree that they are publicly accessible private forums.
Yes.
So they should include jurisdiction concerning how people should act in public areas.
Yes. Just as recently on a video game, Rainbow Six Siege, there has been a lot of people saying bad things and not being team players. They released a thing that you can join that shows how you are as a player so people can stay away from you, and they're banned if they disagree with this stuff. So just like on social media, like on Tumblr, if you have an opinion that goes against, that is hate speech or harmful to others, it will be taken down, as it always is. Always tries to be, sorry.
if government is not involved, so how can social media platforms create guidelines that protect its users from simple harm and like hate speech if government is not involved and there's no law under it?
Well, people are banned every day and also stopped from posting for time limits. So and the guidelines, you're meant to read them, and they are the rules. Like the Constitution, it says what you can and cannot do. And a lot of people do break those rules, but it's on them to read those guidelines and understand what they're posting is wrong.
So it's the sites themselves that you believe should moderate their own content instead of legislation being pushed to keep them legally liable for that?
Yes.
Do you think that maybe a combination of moderation and legislation could actually improve their services and the likelihood of the well-being for its users?
Well, we're currently fighting so that they stay unregulated, so no, not at this moment.
That's it. All right. So now we move on to our rebuttal portion of the debate. We're going to start with our Yes Pro team. Remember, we are looking at our opponent's argument and we're telling what is wrong. We are not presenting any new arguments. And so our pro yes side, you're on the clock starting now.
Now, the opposition may have claimed to not be in favor of zero regulation, but just allowing the issues to solve themselves individually per platform in their own internal moderation has not worked in the short term. As implementations and updates continue on these social media platforms, there are notably solvable issues facing what many users see now that we can solve at this moment. So with the advent of unhinged social media negativity online, which spurs from events of violence that are planned and set online, it becomes more apparent with the emergence of extremists and violent hate groups having large platforms and personalities online that support their ideas. As author Trent Sherman wrote, quote, Section 230 was enacted in 1996 with the only update to its statute being added in 2018 regarding the safe harbor not covering websites, quote, that promote and facilitate prostitution, end quote. For reference, Facebook, YouTube, and Twitter opened their platforms to the public in 2004, 5, and 6. Since 1996, the social media platforms' influence over our society has exponentially grown, as well as the amount of content the platforms restrict, with no meaningful update to the governing statute. Hence, social media platforms' overbroad discretion over choice of removal of user posts must be scrutinized, they need to introduce more legislation that scrutinizes the sites themselves, not just the sites moderating themselves internally, which can have a third party judge for them. The best moderation available now is not imposed enough on social media sites where violent content in text or image formats are constant. Observations of the least moderated sites prove enough that no moderation or extremely little will filter little to no violent content. This is an extremely prevalent issue, especially in an era of high online activity with most age groups, as many of them work, go to school, and interact with others online.
All right. Now we move on to our rebuttal for the con against side, and you're on the clock starting now.
With the rise of the internet, many new innovations have been made. Many of those things are not being regulated by the government, and we believe they should stay that way. Individual companies should have the freedom to regulate their own content to where they see fit. History suggests that modern digital platforms should not wait for the government to impose controls. They should act decisively and proactively now. While the costs of the government action in the internet era have been modest so far, the regulatory environment is changing fast. The goal of self-regulation should be to avoid the tragedy of the commons, where a lack of trust destroys the environment that has allowed digital platforms to thrive, keeping people's freedom of speech, and people should be able to express their open opinions freely. We believe that there should be some companies that should have a type of regulations, like some companies already spring into action when needed. There are many requests for posts that are being monitored for violence and inappropriate content. This can oftentimes be a lengthy process, but at least companies are doing something that suits their interests. The government would take it to a greater extreme by just banning certain things that that infringing users' freedom of speech while also spinning narratives where they see fit. People would not know if what they see is real or if the government regulators altered it. Finding a balance between total recklessness and oppression of content is key. While self-regulation is a lengthy process, it is still in the best interest of the company and the user using these platforms to be regulated by those companies.
As the other side has mentioned, another thing that is a huge problem with media regulation is the way that fake news is handled. Though it is not always clear to identify this biased content, our side believes that fake news should be dealt with through flagging content rather than it be taken down. We believe that flagging benefits content would deem misleading or misinformation. In response to this, most platforms have developed a process of automatically flagging these journals and content that's put out. With these systems, it would be better for the company and users to avoid fake news. Also, working with getting more quality content reduces the amount of fake news widespread through the world. Many platforms like Twitter have already put this process into place by flagging tweets that are deemed harmful. This includes tweets that threaten physical, psychological, or informational harm. These informational harms include misleading information or disinformation threats to the public health, with election information. With flagging fake news, people are less likely to spread misinformation and be more willing to look at topics than someone that did not see them. Rather than regulating it, it should not have, and not having people's First Amendment right taken away.
All right. Now we've reached the closing, where each team will present why they felt their argument is the best. So we're going to start with our pro side, and then we're going to go to our con. You're on the clock, starting now.
For the current era of online streaming, content has more emerging evidence of the need for regulation for social media. It becomes more and more apparent in cases of private ownership completely dismantling their moderation and communications teams. The effect of unmoderated content will be seen very soon with every future media deregulation or lack of moderation from the companies themselves. And we believe that our statements have been only proven more with current events occurring on social media sites.
All right. And you're on the clock, starting now.
Most would agree the internet does need rules. It has been proven time and time again that even with rules, clever users can still get their message out of ill intent. Platforms are designed to identify possible threats and stop them before they can cause any harm. Some people argue that everything should be regulated by the government, but that can lead to too much regulation. Platforms consistently update and evolve their rules to fit the ever-changing digital world. This means that people will no longer be able to freely post harmful ideas, images, or videos on social media, but they will be able to express themselves and their opinions without fear of the government saying they can't. The government having control of social media means they can spin narratives where they see fit. People would not know People would not know if what they see is real or if the government regulators altered it. Finding a balance between Finding a balance between recklessness and oppression is key. Quote from Cruz 2020, "Conservatives want social media titans regulated to remain neutral, while liberals tend to want them to eradicate harmful content and address other alleged social ills. Communist countries control what their citizens see and manipulate them by not allowing them to see the truth or make decisions by themselves. They are not allowed to be free-thinking or speak. It is important for companies to protect the right to keep the platforms free of government involvement."
All right, everybody, let's give it up for both teams. Now we enter our question and answer session where we will ask our audience if they have any questions, and we have 15 minutes for that. Any questions from our audience? Come on up, Brian, and you can ask the question in the mic there. Come on up.
So sorry.
So this is for the con side against media, or you're for media regulation, more media regulation. What is an ideal world for you? Like, how far would you push media regulation? Like, when is it enough?
One that prevents cases of capital attacks where groups can allocate together online and form attacks on areas where we consider our democracy the strongest.
The ones that like just we are protected enough so we don't have to worry about crimes being committed online. The organizations that like prosper online, they can be easily accessed. We want this to be prevented. So even the world that our children walk into, like just us regular citizens walk into, would be safe enough for us to not worry about this stuff, like extra ad pop out, but we don't want to see.
But like, when does that end? Like, when do you stop pushing media regulation?
What we aim to see more is the prevention of hate groups using dog whistles online. Right now, we are observing a bullhorn instead of dog whistles. They are blatantly able to spew hateful views, messages, forms of hate speech that are not acceptable normally and are only accepted online because their moderation is lackluster. So we just want to see an ideal platform or multiple online platforms where this does not occur as commonly, or zero. The goal is zero.
Gotcha.
Thank
Answers
you.
my question.
Any other questions from anyone in the audience there? Come on up to the mic. Just slow down.
With the government putting media regulations on things, would they show like a tag to show that they already regulated it? Like that it's been censored so that people can know? Or would it just be regulated and without people knowing?
The same way that you might see deleted content, deleted tweets, deleted posts from the private social media companies themselves. It would probably just occur the same way, but with some third-party interference with regulation, so that the media companies are more enticed to prevent hate content. So it would probably just be deleted content like we see normally.
Okay. Gotcha.
Any other questions from our audience? Anyone on camera want to ask a question? Okay. Come on up. Yep. You can go through that back.
I think this would be for the con side. Do you believe that there should be further deregulations that would allow the platforms to be sued for the harm caused by content on their sites?
Well, that's what Section 230 was made for, is that the private institution that is the social media platform cannot be sued. It's on the user. So if the social media platform doesn't delete it in time, it's not on them. It's still on the user.
And that's my question. Do you think that should be changed?
Yes, I do think that should be changed because it can be on the platform to delete content that can be harmful or even in real life harmful, like people saying they want to shoot up a school. It should be taken down, and if they don't take it down, it should be on them.
Okay, and so what would the consequences be? They would be open to lawsuits?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
All right. Any other questions, comments? All right. Let's give it up for both teams one more time. Great debate today. Thank you, everybody, for joining us. We're going to take a quick pause, and then we're going to gear up for our next debate coming up.